I'm really lucky to have Cory Dowds to introduce to you all. Cory's been studying astrology for quite a while. How long exactly?
I started studying it seriously around 2009. So
2009. So we're talking 9 years. And you've been studying with me, I should know, but I don't know, for how long?
since 2012.
2012. Okay, and the reason I don't know that is because I don't know how long my best students have been studying because they study, they learn, they don't have to ask me questions, they grab it and they run with it and they make it their own, do good things with it. And that's why I wanted to talk to Cory today because over the last year, we've kind of gotten to know each other more, and he's told me more about the work he's done and a lot of really great stories actually about some of the predictions he's made. And what I like about you, Cory, is that in Vedic astrology, we find a lot of people that are very, very predictive centered. And especially from the Indian camp, the Indians are very predictive centered. And a lot of people in the world kind of consider Vedic astrology as this predictive system. On the other hand, Western astrologers like to try to get into the psychology and stuff. And they're sort of known to be that way. But the truth is, in my mind, an astrologer should be able to predict and they should be able to counsel. Because counseling is really just predicting what's going on inside the person and predicting how the person's literally evolving. We're evolving through the events in our life. So if we only look at the events, yeah, okay, those are the events, but I feel predicting about the evolution itself, which is really what counseling astrology is a really important part. And Western astrologers focus on that, but they don't have some of the really cool tools to do a complete job with that, in my opinion, that we have with Vedic astrology, such as the patia, the ages of the planets, and just simple indications of signs and stuff. We have a very rich symbolism in Vedic astrology that Western astrologers kind of let go of. They used to have it. And so I love it when I see someone who kind of is focusing on both, someone who actually really takes predictions and makes predictions, and not just basic predictions, but detailed predictions, that are accurate, and they're not 2-year-long windows, but they're small windows of time, and who also, is able to help a person make peace with their lives and help the person see how they're evolving and understand their path, which really, if that's done really well, the person doesn't have any questions about their future. And so you're one of these people who actually, have a talent for both of those. So I was really excited to find that out because until this last year, I didn't know that much about you because you've been just chugging away, building your own practice. You built your own practice without my help. A lot of my students, I start sending people to them. You built a practice without, I put you on my site last year, but you already been chugging away for years as a professional astrologer. So you're really a self-made astrologer, which is my favorite kind of student, and you've also told me things you've developed that you've learned from me and you've taken to the next level, which always excites me. So I wanted to start today by hearing some of your, some of the fun predictions, some of the good, neat predictions that you've made, just to give people an idea what, a young predictive astrologer can do.
Yeah, thanks, Ernst. It's an honor to be on your channel too, by the way. And I should say that I did have a lot of help from Ryan Kurzak as well, when I was coming up too.
Right.
So I can't say I completely did it on my own because he was a great teacher and kind of helped me with some things.
Okay, good.
But yeah, first off, before I go into it, I don't know, sometimes it's hard for me to talk about myself and the things that I've done. But I have had to do that, and I've had to kind of make my own way in my life, and that's been a part of my chart. And I think one thing that really helped me to get good at predictions was, for a while, I would do these little farmers market events over at this town right near me, and I would do these $20 for 20-minute readings. And it was like after I had spent about 3 years or so studying with you, and I'd really learned like the Rashis, the Avashtas, and the Jaimini stuff, and had gotten that under my belt for a few years. And so I just really needed to have a lot of strangers to practice with, and just, okay, is this right or wrong? And so that ended up being a really great experience for me where I started to really see like, wow, this stuff is working. And gosh, there were times where like in just 10 minutes, I was able to predict, I was able to see that a guy would do real estate. He had certain karakas and combinations for real estate. And he was just like so surprised. And I think he also suggested that he worked for the government, and he also was a judge as well, which I know that wasn't a strong prediction, but you know, seeing his wife, like his wife's jaw just dropped when I said those things. It was really neat. And you know, just little things like that can be a lot of fun for people. That person, they only gave me $20. They were just curious. So I'm not saying that that was like a life-changing event, but for whatever reason, that was what happened. He was there and he got that experience. There was another time when there was these two young girls that they were in their college age, like in their 20s, and they wanted to just see, okay, what's it like to have a reading, you know? They gave me the $20, and I predicted that she had grown up in a blue palatial mansion, a blue house, a very massive house on an island, in a wealthy family. And again, she didn't really say anything, but her friend was just, her friend's jaw just dropped and was like, what? How did you know that? I was freaking out, but she just did it. She was probably spooked by it, maybe even, or something. Mm-hmm. I think for some reason I have a weird karma for predicting property and house-related things, maybe something to do with my Mars. Sure. I can remember another time when I predicted a friend would grow up in a red brick house that her mother owned, and that she would later inherit that house.
And the blue palatial mansion, the blue big house, how did you predict it was blue? What did you use for that?
Okay, I used Gemini, and I know that there are different ideas about that, but it was definitely Gemini that time.
So that's the house planet was in Gemini, which is blue.
Yes, and there was that Gemini factor for having a beautiful home, a palatial mansion, and then there was also an Aquarius, which I can't remember why Aquarius was lining up with it, because I know that some people think Aquarius would be dark blue, and that could make sense, but it wasn't. I didn't make that connection. I know that because I didn't think that at the time.
Yeah. Okay, so it was Gemini.
It was something to do with Aquarius too.
And that's the cool thing. You know, the old astrologers used to give these type of details: a blue house, a palatial house, a house on an island. Even giving one of those would be pretty profound. Nowadays, I find most Vedic astrologers just gloss through that stuff. They don't give the details. And the details, just for everyone's information, are given mostly by the signs. That's why you need to know your signs really well, and then you can predict details. Without knowing those, you won't be able to predict the details. And for some reason, I haven't seen any Vedic astrologers ever really work hard on predicting signs. Noel Till, who's a Western astrologer, used to predict with great detail. And so I love it when I can predict the detail of something. To me, that's the ultimate challenge. That's the hardest thing to predict. That's the finest skill, actually, is to predict the details. And so that's what really got me excited about talking to you, is that you were predicting these details after just a few years, which most Vedic astrologers I've met never even try to do that.
It's the most exciting thing, too.
It is.
It makes you just really like fall in love with the whole process, you know? And you're like, wow. By the way, this house I moved into I did not paint it, the colors. It was just like a beach house, you know? So they chose their own colors, and my fourth house is Gemini.
Perfect. So you got a baby blue house. Good. And just for everyone's information, Gemini rules this nice blue shade, this light blue shade, you know? Okay. So then you had another one you were going to tell I interrupted. What was that?
Oh, yeah. There was another very similar one where someone's fourth house and quality factors were very strong. Like it was like Mars was in Aries in the fourth. Other indications from the Swampsha were all indicating growing up in a red brick house. So that was like really obvious. But, you know, so I said that to her, and I said she probably would inherit it, or that there was like an ancestral connection to it. And her mother owned it, and it is very likely that she was like, yeah, my mother is probably going to give it to me. She's always talked about that. And what's funny too is with that person, not to get off on another thing, when I was first studying, I just like didn't even know it, but I just spit it that, oh, you're gonna study Ayurveda, you know what I mean? And then she ended up going to India and studying Ayurveda, and she contracted some health problems there. And one time I met her at the health food store, and she was like, I think I have Lyme disease, Cory. Like, I really do. I went to the doctor, went to 2 doctors. They were both like, that's crazy. No, you don't have it. They wouldn't even send off the tests. So I looked at my phone and cast little Prashna with an app, you know what I mean? And I was like, oh my goodness, it really looks like you might have, yeah, it looks like you have it, and you need to keep looking and do your own independent research. And she sent off her own independent test, and it did confirm that she had it. So that was
Wow.
an unfortunate thing. Just happened to think because I was the same person.
Yeah.
So yeah, what else? There's been Prashna stuff. You know, Prashna can get really fun for predicting the details.
Yeah.
So there was one time when I was first learning Prashna, when I had just bought a new computer and had just got Kala onto that and everything. And so my old computer, it was actually very lucky for me that I just moved everything over. But I took my old computer. I was watching my mother's house, and I went skateboarding. I took a fall, and I was kind of out of it. And so I put the computer on top of the car when I drove back to my house, and it flew off on the bridge. And I got home, and I went, "Oh my God, where's my laptop? I just learned how to find lost things. Let's try." And it said that it was not going to be recovered, and that it was destroyed, and that it was over water. And that it was like over water and involved with water, and that then the Lord was in Libra, which, as we know, Libra represents roads and bridges. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it had flown over on the top of the bridge, the Charleston Bridge, to go downtown. It had flown over and been run over and been destroyed. So it was above water and on a bridge.
Oh,
so
wow.
I was like, ah!
And so you didn't know it fell off on where it fell off on until you looked at the stars.
I actually, to be honest, I didn't figure out the bridge connection until after I drove back and I was on the bridge. I was like, I bet it's somewhere here because I was over water.
Yeah.
And I saw the pieces of plastic of my Apple just shattered all around the ground.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but the ruling planet was like in the 12th in Libra. And yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, so good connection of Libra with roads, because those are the trade roads and everything. Yeah, commerce and stuff. Perfect.
Exactly. And I think that's also why Libra rules like ports, you know, and you know, the trade, yeah, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there was another Prashna I did for someone where they asked where was their mother's lost car key. And so I casted the chart, and the coolest thing about this Prashna was that it was so obvious that I was going to be able to help the person. Like the full moon was with Jupiter, and there was this certain combination where it was like, oh, okay, yeah, I can really help him. And I said that it was in the southwest part of their house, and it was in a brown environment, something colored brown, and it was at ground level or below ground level. I think that's all I could say about it. And then, so she went and looked, and she right away found it, because her bedroom was the southwest part of her house. So she went to her bedroom. It's a brown carpet. She looks around the brown carpet, and under the bed is a brown bedspread, like stashed, and the keys are hidden under the bed on the ground. So it's like, you know, it was there was a combination of earth and water signs. So I knew it was either below ground level or at ground level, you know? And so that was really fun because I got to use all those neat Rashi details, you know?
Yeah, and just for people's information, so how we did that was earth signs represent the ground level, which is obvious. Water signs represent below ground level because the water will seep below the ground level. So all these details are in the old Prashna books. And these are the things we need to know about Rashis if you want to do any real great predictions.
Yeah, and you know, everybody's read these books, but like you were the first person who I saw who was really using these things. So I have to give credit to you because, like, you know, you were practicing, experimenting, and it was actually working. And so, yeah, if it weren't for knowing these Rashis, the tropical stuff, all that, I wouldn't be able to do any of this.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, also, I can remember now just from memory that this summer, along with the water and earth thing, fire represents being at eye level, right? And air...
It's above ground, yeah. And then, and up to about eye level, and then air is higher.
Exactly, yeah. So there was a cassette that my friend had of like these old like Indian devotional chants, and he couldn't find it. And it was like a random tape from India, so he really wanted to find it. And he asked me, and I was like, okay, it's in the place that was last seen but it's above something, or it's like above where you expect it or something. And I didn't know if that was going to work or not. And then like a week later, he found that when he opened his glove compartment, it was like, you know how sometimes you can actually put something on top of the glove compartment and it
Oh,
shuts it?
wow.
And
Yeah.
it closed it in. So it was above the place it was last seen, you know, because it was last put in there, fixed sign rising, you know, so fixed sign rising means it was in the place that was last seen.
Yeah.
And so, but it was above something. So that was really
Very
kind of
cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Now, did you just start doing Prashnas when I taught that Prashna course, what, 2 or 3 years ago? Or were you doing Prashna before that?
No, I learned Prashna first from Ryan. And I think Ryan kind of taught himself it in a sense.
Yeah, he does a lot of good Prashna.
Yeah, so I learned that from Ryan in like 2013. Also, you were speaking about putting me on your website. You put me on your website back in like 2015, I think, just like.
Oh, it hasn't been that many years. Time flies.
Yeah, it's cool. But what was I gonna? Yeah, so I learned Prajna first from Ryan. Then I took your Tajika Prajna class, which was great. I would love to learn more of it if you ever.
Yeah, I'm going to do the second course on that. This was, you know, in this first course, of course, we covered all the houses, you know, but now we're going to cover like special questions in the second course. But just so everyone knows what Prajna is what they call horary in the West. And it's basically where the astrologer casts the chart for the moment you ask the question. And the advantage of that is you don't need to have a birth time to do it. There's different systems. Tajika Prajna is the more common system. It's actually of Persian origin, but it's been preserved in India, and Vedic astrologers use it. And then there's a South Indian version of Prajna, which is even more elaborate, that uses a whole nother, I don't even want to say a whole nother school, whole nother schools of techniques, just really crazy stuff. And that's a very involved type of Prajna. And I think, you know, India definitely is the home of Prajna. And of course, KP has also developed a healthy, really good Prajna system in the last century. So, you know, really Prajna astrology is really highly developed in the Indian books and the Indian texts and by the Indian astrologers who specialize in it. And it's a great system. It has the advantage that, you know, even if we had like an apocalypse and nobody could get their birth certificate, you know, as long as we can calculate that chart, you know, and we could even, if we had to, we could even do that visually, you know. If we, you know, we could start creating, because with Prajna, you just need to know the next day, you know, so you could watch the stars every day and know where they are. In India, lots of astrologers in the old days, they used to memorize where the planets were every morning. And then based on where they lived, they knew when the rising signs would change. And so if someone just came up to them on the street, they would know what the chart was always in their mind, and they would answer questions just as they're walking through town.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. And I just have this kind of romantic sort of feeling about this stuff. So I like to try to be like that. Yesterday I was trying to think, I was like, okay, it's 1:30. So it should be the 9th house rising from where, okay, Aries rising. Okay, and it was like the end of Aries. So it was like, yes. Like I felt good because
it's good to do that. And when you do a Prajna, it definitely feels so magical because you're not even using their birth chart. It's just this coincidence that they just are inspired to ask the question at the time where the chart answers their question. So there's definitely a very interesting process happening, you know, that is really unique.
Yeah, and Western tradition has a great orary and.
Oh yeah, they do, and it's not much different than the Tajika system from India, you know, because the Western system comes from the Persian system too.
Yeah, I was blown away when I got that book by William Lilly, Christian Astrology or whatever. Like,
sure.
And he has the exact same orbs that, you know, Nilakantha gives.
Oh yeah,
as well.
all the old Western astrologers you see is the same orbs for their aspects as the old. You know, as the old Persians did, as the Hindus did with that type of aspect. And then in this last century, Western astrologers started deciding arbitrarily that what aspect you want to use is a personal choice. And what aspects you want to read as far as giving weight to what's most important inside the person, sure, that can be a personal choice. But when it comes to making a concrete prediction, you have to use concrete rules, which means there are orbs of where they're on and off. But since Western astrology doesn't really do that many predictions anymore, they don't. But the ones who do use predictions, they of course pay attention to those rules.
Yeah, I think they're really critical, and I just think it's so fascinating that our Western, you know, culture has kind of just ignored that part. Even historians, like they look at this one battle in England and they don't know why the whole entire army waited 6 months, but it's because William Lilly told them to. They went to William Lilly and were like,
Yeah.
when's the time when the king will be the weakest? And he told them when. And so the entire war was postponed until that time came, and then they all attacked and they were successful. So,
yeah. Well, I think I think there's a valid reason. I know this is not the goal, but I think we should just talk on this because I don't want to knock, Western astrology. I have a lot of respect for a lot of good Western astrologers. But the main reason is just a change in culture. As this last century developed in the West, a large part of the Western world became just so liberated in what the individual could do. Where for the first time, the individual could do more than they ever could. So by 1930s, 1940s, and so on, the individual more than ever in any time could do things. The labor unions were formed, individual rights were starting to emerge. And so the people as an individual, they just felt like they had more power. And see, you want to have a prediction read when you feel no power. When you feel powerless is when you want your future read. Imagine a civilization where you don't have a lot of power to actually activate your life. You don't have a lot of choices. So then you kind of kick back and you're just waiting for it to change. And so that really changed in a lot of the Western cultures, not in places like Soviet and things like that. But then astrology was probably banned there. I don't really know for sure. But in Western Europe and America, where Western astrology tradition has come from in the last 100 years, where the Western astrology has developed, has really been America and Germany primarily. Most of the prominent astrologers, Western astrologers last century have been Germans or American, with a few other ones, other cultures, of course. Every country has donated their great astrologers. And so I think there was just less need because people felt more empowered for the first time. But along with that was this need to develop a greater psychological awareness of their motivations, what their needs really are. Because once you start realizing you can actually have some force and power in your life, the next thing is, well, what do I need? What's going to make me happy? And so there was a huge need for the way Western astrology did go. And while that was happening, there was always a group of Western astrologers, a minority group focused on predictions. And I remember when I was doing Western years ago, I'd go to these gatherings and, there'd be 25 people there and there'd be one or two guys who would just be into predictions. And they were like, they would say their own things and everyone else would go, huh? No one could get it, And, but they were chugging away with these cool techniques, doing predictions. And, so there's a reason for it. And I think Western astrologers, will come to a point where they want to do more predictions at some point. And again, I think we need to do both. If we're an astrologer, I like to do both. Be able to predict when prediction's time, talk when it's time to talk.
Yeah, no, definitely. I noticed, I thought something was really cool was that this one teacher I really like, Mayor Baba, when he was in America, he met Dane Rudyard, and
cool.
Dane Rudyard read his chart, and he was actually the one who influenced Dane Rudyard to move to humanistic astrology, which is to say, doing psychological astrology. So and what's crazy is he would criticize the Indian astrologers a lot back at that time where he was from, because there was just this corrupt Brahmin thing, like, okay, pay me all this money, and I'm just going to be the authority of your life. So it's really funny that even though like he said astrology is a perfect science, but it takes a perfect one to know it all. And then he said that when, like, okay, don't worry about these guys over here. But then when he went to America, he was like, yes, humanistic astrology, this is what America needs. And it's just fascinating because that's what we embraced either way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I have to say that that's one thing. If I was going to talk about predictions, like you don't always need a prediction. You know what I mean? Sometimes you need more of the psychological counseling. And I think that the longer I've done astrology, the more I've gotten to the point where sometimes people who come only wanting the predictions, that's not what they need. You know what I mean? And it's kind of up to the person to use their judgment or just to see what they're called to say when they do their reading, I guess, right?
All right. Tell us some more cool stories.
All right. So there was, when I first started, switched over to tropical Rashis, I was really upset about a relationship, and I predicted the exact day that the girl would call me and want to get back together with me. So that made me feel really good. That was like this really validating sort of thing for me at the time. there was this one monk who contacted me once, and he was caught up with this woman, and he was not sure if he was going to have to leave the ashram or not. And I predicted, like, man, it looks like you're really going to end up leaving the ashram in the next few months when this dasha switches and all this stuff. It's going to get even more intense, and you're probably going to travel overseas a little bit, but you're probably going to eventually end up going back to the ashram life. You know what I mean? And that's the thing for you. You just have this crazy moon Rahu stuff going on. You've got to experience this thing, and it's just what's called for. And he was like, I don't know, man. Okay, if you say that, I don't know. There's no way I'm going to do that. And then he ends up doing it, and he ends up letting me know, okay, now I'm in Russia, and I'm running around teaching with this person. And he was so into the prediction because he couldn't expect it, that he ended up studying astrology and getting in and studying all this stuff. He's probably watching this video. And I asked if I could mention it.
Okay, sure.
But that was a really fun experience because, as you know, getting into an ashram and having that life, you can be very, very dead set. But as we know, like, things change.
Nothing's certain. And it's always the most enjoyable predictions, always the ones that nobody expects could ever happen, right?
Yeah, and it was like so strongly indicating that I didn't want to say it. I think now I've gotten a little bit easier about saying tough things. You know, people pay me, they want to hear the tough thing. But when I was first starting, I was a little bit afraid to say some of those things maybe. What were some other? Oh, I really like to predict, like, which is, if you're the younger or the older of your siblings.
Okay.
And that seems to also relate to Mars. I have all these weird Mars things when it comes to forecasting. But yeah, I really enjoy that. So I predicted, like, okay, this guy is the youngest of his siblings. He's a few inches shorter than all of them as well. Also, that, like, some abandonment Scorpio issues going on in his life, and then was also able to forecast that he had a wife who was a psychic or involved in the occult in some way. And all those were true. And
Nice.
And his wife was like an angel reader type of person. And oh yeah, and then he even found out later on that his mother, like because we talked about the Scorpio thing, the lack of nourishment from the mother, and his mother actually ran out of breast milk while he was being nursed, and a lot of things like that. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, just a few weeks ago, I was guessing that someone was either a chef or a barber. Like those were you're either a chef or a barber, or maybe you've done both. And they got back to me. That was just a recording, so I never even spoke to the person, never even met him. But they confirmed that, yeah, I was a chef's assistant and I was a hairdresser, which is like basically the same thing.
Same thing. So he did both. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. That was kind of cool. I was like, okay, I don't know if you're one or the other, but he actually did both.
Yeah. So they were both Mars jobs, right? And then you had to look for the first house has to be there for the barber, right? Because the head, right?
Exactly. And he had Venus and Moon connections too, so there was a luxury quality.
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
That's why he wasn't going to just be a soldier.
Okay. But, nice.
Yeah. Then there was someone, I think this summer, where I did a reading where I said, okay, I think you might have some blood flow circulation issues and some sexual organ issues, and maybe even STD or something. But it turned out the STD was off. But she was just like, no, that's not true. No, I'm fine. Later on, I find out she had endometriosis, which is when, the menstruation blood flow doesn't go out and leaches into the body. So, that's kind of funny how sometimes you don't even really think about it when someone's telling you this stuff, but then later it kind of came out. And I didn't exactly predict you have endometriosis.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing about astrology. You can't predict a disease with astrology. You can predict what's happening to the body, and if you have the medical knowledge, then you can label that disease.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm not a doctor, but maybe if I was a doctor and I also had this information, that would be more clear. Oh, another Prashna I did for someone that I thought was really interesting was about a cryptocurrency. He was saying, should I invest in this cryptocurrency? And it said, oh man, you just missed the window actually. Like you just, sorry, and so he was like, man, that sucks because I just made like $400. I bought a coin for 25 and it went way up and all this stuff. And So as a friend, I'm like, okay, I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe buy it anyway. Like, that's just what the chart says. But as your friend, I might do it anyway. So he went and bought another one, and it went way back down. So that was kind of a funny example. And, you know, we don't know everything. So in a way, he still made more money than he lost. But
it went downhill from that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was correct in a unfortunate way. Yeah, there was a lot of people over the last year. I was predicting for a lot of Scorpios, a lot of issues with their brothers and sisters and their mother, and property issues going on because of that weird retrograde that happened when Mars retrograded back into Capricorn, which would be the third house for a lot of Scorpios, and with the planet of their siblings, Saturn. And so a lot of people were having a lot of really challenging problems with their older, you know, with their siblings basically, and involving property and involving their mother. I can't remember the exact things, but there were like 3 different people. It was shocking how many people were going through that.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess does that give you some good examples?
Yeah, those are some good examples. So yeah, thanks for sharing, and keep up the good work.
Yeah. I mean, like I was saying, I think that when I read a chart nowadays, I focus more on just telling the whole story. And so it's like you say, though, counseling is also predicting. And so a lot of times I may not say an exact prediction, but, you know, a few times in the last week or two, like in the first 20 minutes of the reading, they were like, okay, that's my whole life story, what you just explained. You know what I mean? And so then it's not like it was an exact thing, but it's like, these are the patterns you're going to go through. You know what I mean? And that is in a sense predicting, but in a blending with counseling in a way.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're predicting the patterns because the person, no matter what the events are going to be writing those patterns, right?
Yeah.
And we only can enjoy the events as good as the patterns. See, a lot of people think that if they have a prediction, oh, that means their life's going to get better. As soon as I get this new job, this money, this boy, this, you know, get married, everything's going to be fine. But it's not. They're still going to have their pattern underneath all those events. And if they don't get working on the patterns when those events come, when that right prediction comes, they'll just muck it up or not be happy with it anyway. So I think it's really important to help them grow into a healthier pattern by predicting their pattern and seeing what parts of it they need to shift. And which part, not that they need to shift like they're supposed to or anything, but which part their chart is encouraging them to shift. You know, the growth that their chart is encouraging them to make, so that they can grow into a happier person as the events unfold.
I also feel like there's some spiritual quality to it where if you cannot change the event, but when you had it predicted and you go through it, you have this sort of like more of this acceptance and this love for it. You can kind of just embrace it and just, wow, like this is a part of God's whole plan for me, you know, and that you feel okay and at peace with life. And so to me, I think that's why I really got into astrology. Well, I always wanted to have like knowledge of things, but I think that was maybe even a deeper drive that I had to feel okay, to feel like, you know, we all have that feeling, and we all want to feel that way at times. And I feel like, you know, there is this compassionate aspect of life and consciousness, and astrology can help us tap into that.
And it's true, if you know the events and, you know, if you have your predictions, you kind of understand that it's just a series of events. It's not as, you know, there's a freedom to knowing it's coming, because, you know, it helps us detach from our roles, not take ourselves too personally, not too seriously, which is where a lot of pain can come from.
Yeah, I think it
creates the event when it comes.
Yeah, in my life, it has created more even-mindedness where, you know, like 5 years ago, I looked back and I was like, oh, wow, I'm going to have 3 years of just that are tough, but then I'm going to have 2 awesome years. And then I'm going to go back to a tough, you know, and so it's just, you know, you kind of just, you get a little bit less, maybe you have more of that just equanimity or something. It's a good thing. It's a good feeling. I don't know.
Okay, good. So people can reach you at eyeoftheveda.com, right?
Yes, not Vedas, but
not Vedas, singular, Eye of the Veda. If you go to Eye of the Vedas, you'll get somebody else who's not Cory and who we don't recommend because we don't know them.
He might be good. Who knows?
What?
He might be good though. Who knows?
We don't know. We don't know him. But so you want to go to eyeoftheveda.com. You can. Cory also got some good articles on there, if I remember right. So for people learning about astrology, there's some good reading material there as well.
Yeah. I've got a YouTube channel as well. It's just youtube.com/eyeoftheveda.com, and also I offer tutoring to people as well, which is a unique option to have one-on-one, interaction with someone rather than just YouTube for people who are interested.
Cool. All right. Well, wonderful. I'll put all that information at the bottom of the video, underneath the video, so people can have it handy there too. All right. Well, thanks for showing up. Take care.
Thanks, Ernst.